On a frigid February day in 1974, a black Volga sedan stopped outside a Moscow apartment. KGB agents emerged, not to deliver a message, but to arrest Alexander Solzhenitsyn, armed only with the truth. His crime? Exposing the brutal reality of the Soviet Gulag system in his writings. Stripped of citizenship, he was forced onto a plane to West Germany. The regime hoped exile would silence him, but Solzhenitsyn's expulsion became a global symbol of the struggle between conscience and tyranny. The Soviet Union, a superpower, was threatened by a single man's words. By exiling him, the authorities admitted their fear of his truth, a truth they could not refute, only suppress. Solzhenitsyn's love for Russia made exile a tragedy, but it was also his survival. Had he stayed, he would have vanished into a prison or psychiatric ward, his testimony lost. Instead, from the West, he became a living monument to resilience, ensuring the world would not forget the crimes the Kremlin tried to erase. His exile was not an end, but the beginning of a new chapter in the fight for truth. The world was now watching and listening. Solzhenitsyn was not born a dissident. Raised in the Soviet system, he excelled in science and embraced communism. When World War II broke out, he fought bravely for the Red Army, a decorated patriot. But the front lines revealed the gap between Soviet ideals and brutal reality: corruption, incompetence, and fear. Quietly, he questioned Stalin's leadership in private letters. In Stalin's USSR, even doubt was treason. Arrested in 1945, stripped of rank, he was thrown into the Gulag for anti-Soviet remarks. The loyal soldier became a political prisoner, his faith in communism shattered. In the camps, he met victims from every walk of life: priests, farmers, intellectuals, each with a story of suffering. Solzhenitsyn's personal tragedy became a mission to remember, survive, and one day tell the world what he had seen. The dissident was born in the crucible of the Gulag. The Gulag was a hidden empire of forced labor camps stretching across the Soviet Union. Millions, dissidents, peasants, minorities, even the unlucky, were swept up for the smallest crimes. Article 58 made anyone a target. A joke, a late arrival, a foreign relative. Any excuse would do. Inside, survival meant endless labor, starvation, disease, and brutality. Guards ruled by fear, prisoners became numbers. The system aimed not just to punish, but to break the human spirit. Yet even in this frozen hell, prisoners clung to dignity, reciting poetry, sharing stories, forging bonds. The Gulag was meant to erase memory, but survivors like Solzhenitsyn turned it into a story the world could never ignore. Through their courage, the truth of the camps would not be buried. In the Gulag, Solzhenitsyn became a living archive, composing and memorizing stories in secret. After his release, exiled in Kazakhstan, he began to write down what he had stored in his mind, risking everything. His breakthrough came with One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, published during Khrushchev's brief thaw. For the first time, Soviet readers glimpsed the reality of the camps. The response was overwhelming. Letters, stories, and gratitude poured in. Solzhenitsyn realized his mission was larger, to document not just his suffering, but the entire system. He gathered testimonies from survivors, weaving them into his magnum opus, the Gulag Archipelago. This was more than literature. It was a charge sheet against the regime, a collective memory of millions. Writing was dangerous. He worked in secrecy, hiding manuscripts, trusting only a few. He knew the price of truth could be death, but he pressed on. The Gulag Archipelago was a literary investigation. History, memoir, and journalism combined. It exposed the machinery of repression, from arrest to extermination. Solzhenitsyn's pen became a weapon, his words a lifeline for the silenced. The world would soon hear what the Soviet state tried so hard to hide. The Soviet thaw ended. Repression returned. Solzhenitsyn, once a hero, became an enemy of the state. He was expelled from the writers' union, surveilled and harassed. Friends were threatened. His every move watched. The KGB seized a hidden manuscript. A trusted typist, broken by interrogation, took her own life. With the state closing in, Solzhenitsyn ordered the Gulag Archipelago published abroad. Its release in Paris in 1973 sent shockwaves through the Kremlin. The regime unleashed a propaganda assault, branding him a traitor, but they could not imprison or ignore him without global outrage, their last move exile. In 1974, Solzhenitsyn was arrested, stripped of citizenship, and sent to the West. The truth they feared was now unstoppable. Solzhenitsyn's sacrifice ensured the world would know the reality of the Gulag. The regime's attempt to silence him only amplified his voice. The price of truth was high, but it changed history. Even before exile, Solzhenitsyn's courage was recognized worldwide. In 1970, he won the Nobel Prize in Literature. The Soviet regime tried to block him from accepting it, fearing he'd never return. He accepted in absentia, highlighting the repression he faced. The publication of The Gulag Archipelago was a turning point in the Cold War. Western illusions about the Soviet system shattered. The book's authenticity and detail made denial impossible. Solzhenitsyn became a global symbol of resistance, but he was no simple hero. In the West, he criticized materialism and spiritual emptiness, warning that the struggle was not just political, but moral. His Harvard speech in 1978 challenged both East and West to seek higher truths. His work transformed the Gulag from rumor to historical fact, arming dissidents and changing the world's moral landscape. In the Soviet bloc, his books circulated in secret, giving hope and clarity to the oppressed. Solzhenitsyn proved that one voice armed with truth could shake an empire. Exiled in Vermont, Solzhenitsyn never stopped working or longing for Russia. In 1994, after the Soviet collapse, he returned traveling across the country, reconnecting with its people. The new Russia was chaotic, and Solzhenitsyn, ever the moralist, criticized its corruption and loss of spiritual direction. He was no longer a dissident, but a stern voice warning against forgetting the past. He continued to write and speak, always guided by love for his homeland. Solzhenitsyn died in Moscow in 2008, honored at last in his own country. His legacy giving voice to the voiceless, turning state secrets into permanent memory. He proved literature could be a weapon for truth, and that no regime can withstand it forever. Solzhenitsyn's life is a lesson in the power of individual courage, the human spirit's capacity to resist lies and tyranny. His words echo still, reminding us that truth, once spoken, can outlast any empire.